I know it can seem a bit cliche to say this team's draft was really important for them. This is a big draft for this team, because you could argue the draft is important for every team every year. True that. However, there are some times for some teams where certain drafts carry more seminal importance than others. And I don't think this is hyperbole at all to say that this is a really, really big draft for the Houston Texans. For the third straight year, they've got a new coach. In this case, it's former Houston Texan linebacker DeMeco Ryans. You've got to adjust your philosophy around him and what he wants on the defensive side of the ball, what he envisions in terms of locker room fits. You're also talking about the Texans having picks 2 and 12 in round 1. Those are two really marquee picks to have in a draft class for a team that was really bad and has been really bad the past couple of years. It's a big spot for him. And considering all that went on with the Deshaun Watson saga and eventually trading him off, you knew that the Houston Texans going into this draft had to, beyond all else, find their franchise quarterback, which is part of the reason why it was such a big deal when they came back to win in Week 18 against the Colts and screwed themselves out of the number 1 overall pick. You know, the whole thing was, they were taken for Bryce Young, and now they screwed the pooch on that opportunity at the last moment. All I'll say is this, is that a lot of times the first quarterback taken is not the best quarterback taken in a draft. So it doesn't automatically make you dead to rights. And sometimes you can be talking all this tank crap, and meanwhile, you end up, getting in a fortunate situation anyways. So in terms of the Texans, that's how I kind of look at it for them with their second overall pick. They got their young franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud, were able to keep him away from the Colts, able to keep him away from the Titans. To me, when I look at this, they'd say, they took the better quarterback at 2 than the Panthers did at 1, especially considering the steep price that the Panthers paid to move up to 1 to take Bryce Young. What would you rather do, take C.J. Stroud at 2 and not have to give up any draft picks? Or be the Panthers, and for moving up from 9 to 1, you also give up pick 61 in the 2023 draft. You give up DJ Moore, a 2024 first-round pick, and a 2025 second-round pick. I think if you're being realistic here and not a Panthers fan, anybody else will sit there and say, I'd just rather draft C.J. Stroud 100 out of 100 times. Even if he's not great, at least I got all that additional draft pick capital. I hear you. So not only did they get, to me, my opinion, the better quarterback prospect, they also didn't have to give up a ton to get him. Now, what's interesting is there was a ton of buzz about the Houston Texans really loving and coveting Will Anderson in the lead up to this draft. In the last couple of days before the draft, there was actually some talk about they were just going to take him at pick 2 and then figure out what to do later. And I had opined a couple of days before the draft on Twitter, like, hey, what if they sit there and, spend their pick at 2 on Will Anderson and move up from 12 to 3 to take the quarterback? It's pretty close to what they did, because apparently this Will Anderson smoke was a raging freaking inferno, and they certainly had a huge hard-on for him in their loincloths, because they made a big move up the board from 12 to 3 to go get him. They gave up pick 33, 2024 first and third rounders, which to me is a huge price to pay for an edge rusher in a class that was deep with edge rushers, for a talent that you look at, he wasn't the same in 2022 as he was in 2021. And you have so many holes on that roster. Is this the right time to be really giving up that much premium draft pick capital? I mean, basically to move up 9 spots, you gave up a second this year and a first and third next year. That is a lot. A lot. It better work out, because if that pick you gave up, that first rounder you gave up to the Cardinals to move up, ends up being a top 5 pick, a top 3 pick next year, that deal's going to look really, really stupid. So in terms of the day 1 grade, I love the C.J. Stroud pick for them, and I hate not so much Will Anderson for them, but what they gave up to get him. And some are going to say, well, that you could look at that a different way and say, well, basically, that was them trading up for C.J. Stroud. No, I know where you're going with that, but at the end of the day, they took C.J. Stroud at 2 for a reason, as they should have. They traded up for Will Anderson, cut the bullshit. So I gave him a C, because I loved what they did with the first pick, really, really questioned the approach to get Will Anderson there. At least I could say this, they drafted C.J. Stroud on day 1, and then they came back at day 2, and they invested in the offense again, which is good. That said, I felt like Drew Scruggs was a 2 to 3 round reach at that point. I thought there were better centers on the board. At least I'll say this, though, if you're going to reach, reach for a guy that can help protect your young quarterback, that can help your young quarterback that you just drafted. So from a philosophy standpoint, I get it. And sometimes different teams have different boards and ways they rank talent are different. So the way I ranked Juice Scruggs might have been more generally speaking, where they were doing it at a team-specific thing. That could make sense. But I did not view Juice Scruggs as a late second, early third round pick in this draft. But at least, again, it's investing in helping your young quarterback. And then they came back in round 3 and took Dell. I thought was pretty good value. I know he's small and he drops some passes. There's certainly some concerns there on both of those accounts. But he's really explosive. He gets all types of separation. And he's a big play threat. Again, these types of guys find a way to make it in the NFL, even if they are kind of smallish. And the fact you're taking an slot receiver in the 3rd round with these types of traits, that's pretty decent. So I thought, I thought they reached for their 2nd round pick, got good value in the 3rd round, but liked the approach of helping their young quarterback. I gave him a C for day 2 as well. When you switch to day 3, I thought it was solid, but not spectacular. I think at worst, Dylan Horton's going to be a rotational edge rusher or pass rusher. Henry To'o might get a chance to win a starting job under DeMeco Ryans in that defense. He could. Jarrett Patterson, I think at worst, is a swing interior offensive lineman with some really good pass protection skills. Getting that mid to late day 3 is not bad. I think Xavier Hutchinson has a shot to make the roster. And Brandon Hill's speed at safety could play in the regular rotation as a nickel dime, like 3rd, 4th safety, or at worst be like a special teamer that could come in and have an impact in the game that way. So I gave him a C for day 3 as well. Recapping the Texans draft overall, it all starts with C.J. Stroud, and I really love that pick for them. It was the right quarterback, I felt, for them. And they didn't overthink it. Take the goddamn quarterback, because if you don't have a quarterback, you have nothing. And especially when you think about DeMeco Ryans, he fully appreciates that from his time in San Francisco. That's a team that went to 3 NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl within the last 4 seasons and has 0 rings to show for it because they didn't have a fucking quarterback. So he knows the importance. And then I like the philosophy of building around him in day 2. I still really, really question that approach. That just keeps nagging at me. That big trade up for Will Anderson, no matter how you want to spin it, that is a lot to give up for an edge rusher in a draft class that was pretty deep in edge rushers for a team with a lot of holes. And you say, well, they had a lot of picks this year and next year. Yes, they did. But could you have packaged those up in a different way? Perhaps. But yeah, day 3 brought some solid prospects. Nothing that really makes me say, wow. I thought it was a solid outing for the Texans, but not one that makes me do backflips for them. It's the Will Anderson piece. It's reaching for Scruggs in round 2. Day 3 was good, but not spectacular. It was a solid draft. It doesn't set this organization back. I just don't know how much it's really going to turn the tide for the Houston Texans organization.